Hi everyone, my name is Sumiko, and in the celebration of the spooky season, I'll be doing scary stories live here on Twitch and sharing videos here on YouTube about it as well. I look forward in sharing these spooky and horrific stories with you all. Without further ado, let's get started. Ooh. Now for another bone-chilling tale from creepypasta.com. Titled, "We Can Only Bury the Dead" 13. Walker McCoy was a measure of how stubborn the dead could be. He was buried at 22 feet in somewhere, nowhere, just outside of Greene County on October 4, 1867. 2 days later, a group of Indians found his severed arm identified only by the trashy signet ring. The limb had been scrambling among the bush, squeezing the guts out of a mouse. We hadn't had a clue where the rest of Walker had gotten to, but that crook's arm went back into the ground at 33 feet under the very next day. That's why you should never ride so idly if you happen upon the double crosses. We do a good job as we can, given the circumstances, but there's only so far down a shovel can go. The dead are getting more restless lately. On a sunny day, the flattened tin can pinned to the sidewalk flashes like a trout. Still, no amount of metal on the ground could make Magnum shine. It was a beaten up town pulled this way and that until its arms swung loose from their socket. It was neither here nor there, wasn't ours or theirs, a place secured only by promise. Wyatt sat outside the post office, whistling a broken tune and watching Rose brush her mare. My brother always had a song in him when that girl was around, like all the other guys in town. Such a shame that she'll never look his way. Just as well, Wyatt's been digging graves for far too long, he'd taken up a form of a tombstone. He was pale, lumbering shape of a man that cast the darkness of a shadow. "Eyes back of your head," I said, slapping him on the shoulder with a roll of a poster that I picked up. "Rose doesn't want a man so acquainted with the dead. Dutch, I was just..." He cleared his throat, pushing a hand through his sweat-slicked hair. "Admiring her horse, that's all." I grunted, then hitched up a seat next to him. "Are those all the second-timers?" Wyatt said. I nodded at the posters. He lit up a smoke and took a long drag, then blew out a cloud up into the sky. I frowned at him in silence until he stumbled the bastard out and apologized. "Yep, these are them." "Looks like a lot. How many?" 12. Wyatt looked at me. 12? Yep. He blew out a sign, then went to his smoke. Surprised when I have people demanding their money back. I grunted again. I swiped the cigar from his hands, took a drag of my own, then passed it back. "I guess that's why we were round and back up." He nodded absently. His gaze fell back on the girl. "Still no sign of Walker?" "Nope. But if he was on Indian land, we'll know by now." "Is that good news?" I shrugged, stood up, and squinted down the high street. I watched passers-by mill about the dust and clouds, kick up the horses and the carts. The murmuring of midday crowds and the rattle of shoes on the tin-pressed sidewalk. The men slumped in chairs outside the saloon bars with empty bottles pitched in their hands. The smell of scorched earth and sweat. It was a scent that never quite left Magnum's residence, even if they laid plenty of distance and time between them and the town. Some called it a souvenir. Some called it, well, most called it, accursed. Though, with the way things were lately, I think too many people carelessly throw that word around. I mean, it's just a town. A nowhere place full of nowhere people, all stooped and wild eyed beneath the unforgiving sun. Shit. I know Magnum wasn't much, but it was home. And I sooner ride into hell than see my town overrun by either Indians or the dead. Anyways, let's go, I said, helping Wyatt up to his feet. He brushed off some dirt on his trousers, pulled out his gun, inspected the chambers, then holstered it again. Where are we headed first? Same place as always, I said, where the holes are. We buried Haiti Sinclair last winter at 24 feet. The poor girl was 15 when she hit that dirt. Her back was bent out of shape after the fall from the horse. Mr. Sinclair needed extra convincing to lay his daughter to rest. He wanted to hold on until the spring. The ground's a little hungrier then and doesn't tend to spit people back up. But everyone knows a body doesn't keep long under the Magnum sun. At the time, I thought we'd have put enough mud down. But it turns out that Haiti had gotten an itch. A bit itchy, had a couple weeks back, and was now stalking the cattle down by the Salt Fork. That's why Wyatt and I rode out so close to the double crosses. We owe Haiti's daddy an apology. We follow Salt Fork most of the way, every now and then sweeping the valley for anything strange, but the land was still. All that moved was the Salt Fork which trembled beneath the sun, its ragged clay bluffs burning red like a wound. The land was silent, except a couple of cows that cawed mockingly from the overhead. After a couple of hours, we found what we were looking for. Blood everywhere, White said, bringing his horse to a trot and sweeping the flies from his face. His shirt was already clinging wetly to his back. Our girl must be here. She must be close, I said, nodded at the proud open ribcage of a cow. Its innards were now just a vicious red smear across the dirt. Squinting against the sun, I could see the cow's spine. The cow's spine beyond a small trinket. I almost mistook it as a snake basking in the sand. A little further on, an indescribable lump of meat that I assumed to be the creature's head. Then, where the dust met in the sky, an old barn house loomed. It appeared to be held up with the trees growing through it. I looked to Wyatt, who was circling the disemboweled cow. He cocked his head, then blew out a sharp whistle. I pulled my horse up alongside him to see what he had caught his eye on. As soon as I saw it, my hands went slack on the rein and an oily fear in my guts. Fuck! Curled up inside the carcass of a cow was a fresh body, A child. A small bundle of bones draped in a lump of jewel meat and ragged stripe of skin. Indian skin. And in that poor boy's contorted mouth was another dismembered hand of our friend, Mr. McCoy. Wrist deep to the teeth, fingers still scratching at the back of the kid's skull. Walker's crook brand still visible on the grey meat of his forearm. I wheeled my horse around, bag him up, and find somewhere to bury him. I get the girl. Then I set off at the gallop towards the barn, hoping that we hadn't completely fucked this whole town. Walker, that stubborn bastard. Why wouldn't he just stay dead? The barn was no longer what I'd call a building. It was where, if it weren't for the roof and the braces of a nearby tree, I doubt the walls would stand at all. Long ago, someone had once painted the wooden panels in red. Since then, seasons has come and gone. Now the paint has blistered into a rosette of sun-starched pink. Each picked through the latest of the vines that wrapped their way around the barn's exterior. It was almost beautiful. Two large doors were barricaded by a long plank of wood, though that didn't matter, as there was a large hole yawned open down the left flank of the structure, revealing a room crowded with shadows. I ducked my head to get a better look inside, and noticed a crimson streak snaking along the floor. I checked my gun was loaded and used the barrel to tear away dust certain of the cobwebs, then entered the building. Death was on the air, heavy and sickly sweet. I scanned the room to see wooden crates and tools, blade rusted into a bubbly orange. A wood ladder rose up in the hayloft. I stepped towards it, then froze. A sound, brief as a breath and quiet, like a dying man sighing. My eyes snapped to a dark corner of the bar. A shape has peeled away from the shadows. I cocked my gun and hunkered down behind an old wooden barrel. I watched as a small figure shambled about in the darkness. Haiti? She must have torn out her throat somehow, because each breath sounded like a particular sob. Peering around my covers and trained my gun on the movement in the gloom. Make it clean, Dutch. The girl's gotta still look like her poster when you haul her back to town. Placing my finger on the trigger, I squinted down the barrel and steadied my breath, and waited for her to move into my sight. The figure lurched forward, breaking away from the shadows, and just as I was about to blow that son of a bitch away, I lowered my gun. It wasn't Haiti. No. The shape was that staggered out from the darkness was alive. Another Indian kid. A girl. Maybe 8 or 9. Definitely older than the boy in the cow. She was all beaten up and covered in blood. A ragged tear ran across her face from ear to chin. A thick slab of flesh had peeled away from her cheek and flabbed limply with each uneasy step. She was struggling to suck in a full breath. Her body shuddered with shock I raised the gun again, fixed the girl in my side, my finger hovering over the trigger. Quick and easy. It was the right thing to do. The girl's eyes lazily slid down in her hand, and then she lifted up and looked onto me. They widened and she began to scream and sob. The girl dropped to her knees and threw up her hands, mumbling words I could not understand. But the gesture was clear. She was pleading, praying that I spare her life, that I save her. I holstered my gun and slowly approached the bubbling wreck. Hands on my hip, I blew out a sign and frowned down at her. Who cares if she was Indian? The kid was too damn young to have so much fear in her. Crouching down, I tried to catch her eyes. Then, when it was clear that she was too scared to look up, I reached out. I don't know, shaking her out of shock that she was in, but she flinched, fell backward, and pressed up against the wooden crate. The Indian started whimpering, wheezing as she struggled to catch her breath, blood bubbling out the hole in her cheek, her eyes wide and wild, fixed on me. No, a place beyond me. A soft, uneasy paddle sound came from behind me. Warm and wet air blew against my back. The back of my arm. My heart started to knock. It felt like it's about to get out of my chest. I didn't intend to let them get this close. That's why Wyatt and I spent so much time down the shooting range. Distance was your only friend against these ghouls. Rookie move, Dutch. You stupid son of a bitch. A low, guttural moan rose up from behind me, sending shivers down my spine. I slipped my hand down to my holster and slowly drew out my gun. All the while, I watched the fear in the Indian girl's eyes. "Hi, Haiti," I said under my breath, cocked my gun. "Hey, Haiti," it echoed, with a voice like dirt. She can talk? I turned, raised my gun up, and shot. Her head wasn't quite where I expected it to be, while my bullet kicked up some hay at the back of the barn. Haiti stood about a yard or two away, her back all crooked and snapped sideways. Her spine jutted out of the top of her cleared up hip like a piston tube in an upturned grave. Her upper body had folded into itself, or so that her head knocked against her left hip and both wrists scraped along the floor. That face, it once belonged to a child. It had once been the reason for Clint and Jude Sinclair to get out of bed every morning. But now, she looked like leather held to the flame, all cracked and blacked with rot. Her mouth was gulping like land-bound fish. Her eyes were dull and gray, like tarnished steel. Haiti's lips slowly peeled away from her teeth and gums as she opened her jaw wide. The gray skin on her face loosely buckled up beneath her eyes like fabric caught in a sewing machine. Then, she let out a crackling howl and lunged at me. Haiti's upturned torso swung wildly on the triangle of the tendon and muscle tissue at her wrist. Her arms wide at my side, grabbing a fistful of my shirt. She hooked a finger onto my flank, digging deep into my chest and curling around one of my ribs. I got a shot off and blew a hole in Haiti's arm. A wet lump of meat peeled back and flailed around like a muddied rag as we wrestled against one another by the barrels. My shirt has started to become wet and red. That finger was still stubbornly clasped around my bone. I felt her other hand fumbling about my knee, trying to get a good handful of my pants. I took the gun and began hammering down on Haiti's head, but the angle was awkward as I couldn't get much force behind my blows. My other hand was making wild swipes as she now got it a hold of my leg. Another finger pressed into me. I screamed and tried to push her away, but Haiti was too strong and relentless. The finger tore open my skin and wiggled its way into the soft tissue at the back of my knee. Haiti clumsily plucked at a tendon and sending a shiver through my leg and making it buckled. We both hit the floor. My gun trembled out of my hand. Haiti's guts spilled out of her lips all over me. A wet tang of rubber ropes pressed between us, juice pulling out and soaking my shirt, getting into my face and mouth. The smell of rot hit me hard. I wanted to be sick, gagging, and spurting up a phlegm. Shit! I cried. Another sharp finger tore at my flank and ripped a dirty hole in me. Then she pushed another squirming finger inside. Haiti's finger dug deeper, coiling around the rubber threads in my knees and slowly pulled. Harder and harder, then snapped. My leg folded on its own accord. A pain lives through me like a cut from a rusty blade. Bile purred up my throat and rolled about in my mouth like a thick, flurry slug. I spat it on Haiti's face, dirt matted hair in a pathetic act of defiance. I grabbed at the hand, attempting to excavate my chest and desperately tried to pull it free. But with each tug, Haiti's grip around my rib grew tighter. Her hands was now sunk up to the knuckles. It was no use. I have to try another way, or else maybe if I was off my back, I could break away. I rocked my body, kicked off a nearby wooden crate with my good leg. Haiti resisted, tried to hold me down, but I kicked out again and managed to swift my weight enough to roll us over. Shit, Haiti hissed. Her mouth snarled with hatred. She snapped those tombstone teeth at my stomach, yet bit down on nothing but air. I coughed out a laugh, already thinking myself as a winner. Then, she showed me how dire my circumstances truly were, and twisted her fingers around inside my chest. Then, she pinched on something, pulled, half-grasped, trapped in my throat, and my body recoiled in pain. Pink and blue light flashed at the edge of my vision. Glancing down at the wound in my chest, I noticed something odd. Between Hades' fingers and thumb was a glistening crimson bolt that was now protruding from between my rib. It looked like my chest had blown a huge bubble. She gave it another twist. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't fucking breathe. I swiped wildly at her. Started peeling her fingers away from the flesh she excavated from me. But her grip, it was so tight. And my fingers, they were so slippery with her rotten flesh and blood. With another vicious tug, my vision flashed white and vomit lurched up my throat. Burning like a slab of cattle prod, my hand still fumbled, still failing me. I was going to pass out. I was going to die. Hades would continue to rip me apart, then the Indian girl. Then, who knows? Hades pulled away. Hades pulled again. He pulled again on my lung, the organ slipping a little further out through the small gash in my side. A bloody lump exposed, the inside out. My body snapped forward, I vomited again, and all I could think about was the train tracks. The blackened steel grind and the wood slippers, bisecting the desert and disappearing into the horizon. Iron John King, the railroad worker with a sunburnt scalp, oiled smeared cheek, and daily spotted at the saloon bar. So why John? John had an accident while laying tracks at a decade old. He'd been steaming drunk, and after a long day in the sun, he collapsed onto a box of rail spikes. He woke up with a hangover and 6 inches of steel hanging from the side of his head. Now fully healed and nowhere near sober, old John always enjoyed showing the boys his party tricks, where he poked his entire tongue out the hole in his cheek. As I breathlessly fought with that bitch and watched her groan and snatch and tug at me, I wonder if I'll still be alive when the railroad tongue eventually flopped out of my chest. A noise loud and hard and shaking the air around me. Hades' face broke open and bloomed like a poison flower. Her skull scattered into sharp shards of white and oozed with charcoal slug. I felt Hades' weight fall off. It fall off. And finally, she's off me. Her grip relented, and suddenly air filled my chest again. Another gunshot, then another. I was breathing, ragged and shallow, but breathing nonetheless. I tried to open my eyes. Light swarmed in, flashing and blinding. A whirlwind of colors and shapes. I tried to get up and was firmly shoved to the ground. Pain vibrated through my entire body. "Dutch," a voice said. "I don't think you should move yet." What? I peered up at the silhouette looming over me. The dark face sickeningly spinning, yet slowly coming into view. And just before the light hit Wyatt's panicked eyes, I could even sworn I'd seen another man stood in his place. A dead man. A lost man. The crook. What the fuck happened? Ain't it obvious? I coughed. Don't worry, Dutch. It's okay. Wyatt wasn't fooling anybody. His voice a couple of registered too high. Well, get you to Mary or Needles or anyone who can stitch you back up. I felt pressure on the wound in my chest. I coughed again, the taste of sick in my mouth. Not Mary, I said, my hand taking a fistful of white syrup. She'll tell half the town and we can't have anyone knowing what went down. Okay, Needles, White said. His presence still felt otherworldly. I'm sorry about this. A sharp pain in my side. I curled up into a ball. Fuck! I screamed. I gasped and gasped for breath that didn't come. My hand went searching for the blade that he thrust into my side and instead found a small gulping hole, and then suddenly I could breathe again. What did you do? I don't know, Dutch. That squeaked nervous voice from when our dad would bring out the belt. Just kind of pushed it back in. Pushed it back in? Yeah, he said. I don't think your lungs are supposed to be on the other side. I sucked in another deep breath. It hurt like a motherfucker. But at least I had air in me again. I rolled onto my side, then tried to brave the blinding lights again. I opened my eyes. Dark lumps of flesh everywhere. Wooden crates upturned and glistening with blood. The splintered hole of cool blue sky in the side of the barn. The warm afternoon sun lancing in and motes of dust splashing gold on the air. And a body. The girl. Not Haiti. The Indian girl. A bloodied bundle in hay and dirt, legs and arms splayed out in all directions. Such a shameful shape. Her face was now loose and emptied of the fear and pain from moments ago. Smoke coiled up the nasty hole above her left eye. Those eyes. How they stared for miles and miles and miles. As if fixed on some unseen place beyond. What did you do? I coughed. I saved your dumbass, Wyatt grunted back. He was tearing off strips of his shirt and pressing them against my blood-soaked skin. Shot those ghouls that jumped ya. I grabbed Wyatt's collar and brought him eye level, rage rising in me like a burning flame. There was only one! I spat it into his face. But, I shook my head. Another Indian kid. Oh. Wyatt glanced over the body. Then his face creased into a deep frown. Yep, I said, nodding. Then, suddenly, all of energy, all hope, I collapsed into his shoulder. My rage drained away the left. What's left? What's left in me? It was cold now. It was futile. Anger wouldn't change anything. We already had the blood of one Indian on our hands. What was two? Can you walk? Don't know, and I'm too scared to try. Wyatt's jaw was tight, nostrils flared, the face of a kid who was always too nervous to wade out beyond the reeds in the river. Despite being a head and shoulders above all the other kids in town. Wyatt nodded, then disappeared for a while. He searched the barn for some wooden rope. Then, he did his best to piece together a makeshift brace for my bad leg. It was awkward and hurt like a motherfucker, but With Wyatt's help, it got me to my horse. I kept my eyes trained at the horizon while Wyatt backed up the girl and prepared the barn to burn. No witness, no evidence, no crime. Only we'd know and God, if he was still knocking around. The sun was loitering pretty close to the distant mountains when Wyatt finally emerged from the barn dragging two full sacks. You didn't need to peek inside to guess which one was Hades, all shapeless and wet. It reminded me of Mama, who returned from Salt Fork with a bundle of laundry wrapped over her shoulder. Then, after slinging the girls over the back of each of the horses, Wyatt set the barn on blaze. We didn't wait long before setting off for the spot Wyatt picked up for the boy and the cow. Just waited long enough to watch the shadow. The shadows dancing along the walls inside, and smoke began to plumb out. We must have ridden out about a quarter mile when I reined my horse and looked back at the flame. The sky was beginning to bruise, and flame was completely swallowed the barn. Its amber tongue almost looked like that they were licking at the pinkish underbellies of a distant cloud. Almost content with the sight, I was about to ride on, but something caught my eye. Amidst the fiery blaze, I could see something dark moving within the yawn, open shell of the barn. What's that? I nodded toward the flame. Wyatt followed my gaze and cocked his head. What you see? I squinted, tried to get a better look, a shape moving with the fire. As black as night. Smoke? Or maybe some wood thoughts had started to frail? No. It looked like a man. A man? A dark figure stepped out from the fire and then stopped. The flame still danced above the man's frame, but he appeared like it was nothing. Motionless. Silence. Why wasn't he thrashing around in pain, rolling in the dirt and screaming? Do you think that's why I didn't even have to utter his name? We both knew, of course, that it was the stubborn bastard. The one that started all of our problems. The reason Magnum was the godless patch of dirt. It was the crook. It was Walker. We stood, turn around, and take him out, said Wyatt, sliding up next to me. I shook my head, my eyes fixed on the man on the fire. No. We got bodies to bury. But Dutch, he's on foot. We can finally get that son of a... Enough, I shouted. My words ring over the empty land. We have 3 bodies we need to deal with, and only 3 working legs. How do we suppose we also bring that bastard home too? But Dutch, but nothing, I said, turning my horse around and my back on the fire. That dead gonna be the last of your worries when some pissed off Indian comes into town looking for their kids and find our crook's fingernail in one and your bullet in the other. Let's just do what we do and dig some deep fucking holes. Now, take me to the dead boy. It wasn't far, and Wyatt had already made a hell of a starting on the grave, the dirt looking good, barely any rocks, which for Magnum is like striking oil. We dug in silence until the moon was the only light we had. Wyatt shouldered most of the burden, but despite my leg, I was pleased with the amount of earth I've been able to shift. Perhaps all was not lost. For a while, we just stood there and stared out across the land. The distant mountain looked like the spine of a fleeing giant. Squint hard enough and you can see the double crosses, White said. Finally breaking the silence, I nodded. You don't need to tell me to see those. Yep, lit a cigarette and started to smoke. He offered me a drag, but I declined. You okay? I shook my head, then after letting the question roll around in my skull for a while, I asked, have you ever heard them talk? Wyatt shot at me. Shot a look. Took a long drag, then sipped it into the dirt. Nope. Haiti did. I frowned at the distant cluster of wood stakes that was protruding on the ground. Their shadows were long and hatched the sun-starched grass. Does it matter? White said, flicking his tongue into the dirt. I don't know. We rode back to town, Haiti's chewed-up corpse lumped over the back of Wyatt's horse. Our backs against those two unmarked graves, not a word shared between. Silence was our only honesty, our only safety. For a while now, Wyatt and I had tricked ourselves into thinking we were doing the town a favor. Heck, there were days when I'd joke and half believe we were doing God's work. How foolish we were. In truth, there's nothing complicated or special about what we do. In the end, all we do is dig holes, throw people in them, then pray the ground doesn't spit them out or just accept our offerings. Doing God's work. Christ, I knew it. Wyatt knew it. Everyone in Magnum had the thought rattling about in their heads somewhere. How could we continue to have faith when the dirt just kept saying no? The morning light flashes crimson off the pressed tin by the time we could see Magnum on the horizon. The town looked like it was on fire. Perhaps it soon would be. It was the only thing remarkable, the dead yet hard-fought landscape. Everything else was just the sky and the dirt that had grown near us and started rejecting the dead. Our hearts now heavy with depths we own, our minds rattled by the dreams of a ravaged world and heaven close to all creatures who, beneath the silence of Magnum sun. After seeing Walker burn against the twilight sky, I'm certain that there's a hell. Though, it may not be a place we go, but rather something we can become. The border crossing. You need to keep an eye on your child, or else they may never come back. There was a couple from Texas who was planning a weekend trip across the Mexican border for a shopping spree. At the last minute, their babysitter cancelled, so they had to bring along their 2-year-old son with them. They had been across the border for an hour when the boy got free and ran around the corner. The mother tried to find him, but he was missing. The mother found a police officer who told her to go to the gate and wait. Not really understanding the instructions, she did as she was told. About 45 minutes later, a Mexican man approached the border, carrying the boy. The mother ran to him, grateful that he had found the boy. When the man realized it was the boy's mother, he dropped it and ran. The police were waiting for him. The boy was dead. In the 45 minutes he was missing, he had been cut open, all of his organs removed, and stuffed with bags of illegal substances. The man was going to carry him across the border as if he was asleep. Baby doll, please don't hurt me. In the southern Illinois, a toy company began selling realistic baby dolls to expecting mothers, but apparently after the mothers had their child, the toy baby would start crying. Eventually, the rocking motion that was advertised to calm it down wouldn't work, and you couldn't get it to stop even without shaking it. Eventually, when it started crying, the parents would have to beat it, and the beatings and the trashings would have to get harder and harder and harder to get it to be quiet. The only thing that seemed to shut the baby doll up permanently was bashing its head against the wall to destroy whatever mechanism triggered the crying. One more, and then silence. On more than one occasion, though, neighbors called the authorities to report child abuse, found the bloody remains of an infant smeared across the walls and floors. The police officers were shocked. In most cases, the mother couldn't understand why the police were there. She just said, "Got rid of that stupid doll," as she rocked the baby-shaped object wrapped in a blanket, thinking that's her child. But in reality, that is not the case. The hook. Sometimes danger lingers so close, you can feel it. The reports have been on the radio all day, though she hadn't paid much attention to them. Some crazy madman has escaped from the state asylum. They were calling him the Hook Man, since he had lost his right arm and had it replaced with a hook. He was a killer, and everyone in the region was warned to keep watch and report anything suspicious. But this didn't interest her. She was more worried about what to wear on her date. After a few calls with her friends, she chose a blue outfit in the very latest style and was ready and waiting on the porch when her boyfriend came to pick her up. They went to a drive-in movie with another couple, then dropped them off and went to the locals' lovers' lane. The blue outfit was a hit, and she cuddled close to her boyfriend as they kissed to the sound of romantic music on the radio. Then the announcer came back on and repeated the warning she had heard that afternoon. An insane killer with a hook in place of his right hand was loose in the area. Suddenly, the dark, moonless night didn't seem so romantic to her. The lover's lane was a secluded area and was off the beaten track, a perfect spot for the range madman to lurk, so she thought. Pushing away her boyfriend. "Maybe we should get out of here," she said. "That hookman sounds dangerous." "Oh, come on, babe, it's nothing," her boyfriend said, trying to get in for another kiss. She pushed him away again. "No, really, we're all alone here. I'm scared." They argued for a moment, then the car shook. The car shook a bit, as if something or someone has touched it. She gave a shriek and said, "Get us out of here!" "Jeez," her boyfriend said in disgust, but he turned the keys and went roaring out of Lover's Lane with a screech of his tires. They drove home in snowy silence. And when they pulled in her driveway. He refused to help her out of the car. He was being unreasonable. She fumed to herself. She opened the door and stepped into her driveway with her chin up and her lips set, whirling around, and slammed the door as hard as she could. Then she screamed. Her boyfriend leaped out of the car and caught her in his arms. "What is it? What's wrong?" he shouted. Then he saw it. A bloody hook hung from the handle of the passenger side door. The woman. Even the kindest gestures can lead into a chilling encounter. There was a guy who worked in the forest as a lumberjack. Every day he would ride his motorcycle to the forest to cut down trees, and then he would go home again. So one day there was a huge storm. After cutting down all the trees he needed to cut down, he got on his bike and started driving home. About halfway home, he noticed a woman walking down the street. She looked about 25 or 30. Anyway, she looked absolutely drenched in water, and she was shivering, pale. So the guy pulls up next to her and says, "Hey, you look cold. Shall I drive you home?" "Oh yes, please," she replies. So she gets on the back of the motorcycle and he starts driving. "Where do you live?" he shouted through the wind and rain. She tells him her address, so he focuses on the road, and soon enough he gets to her street, where she lives. He pulls up to the house number she told him before. He gets off his bike, but when he looked back at his bike. There was no one on it. She was not there. He thought that she might have fallen off back there. He drives back to where he picked her up and all the way back to her house, but he doesn't find her. He rings the doorbell. An old lady opens the door. "Hello," she says. So the guy explains what happened. "Oh, you must be mistaken, young man," the old woman says. "Mistaken?" the guy says. "Well, yes," says the old woman. "My daughter died 5 years ago." Drip, drip, drip. One night at 2 a.m., Lucy woke up to a strange noise coming from somewhere in her house. Drip, drip, drip. She thought it was probably nothing, so she tried to go back to sleep. After half an hour, she woke up again. Drip, drip, drip. She decided to find out where the noise was coming from. She tiptoed around and noticed the noise were coming from the bathroom. "Aha!" she whispered. She whispered to herself. "It's coming from the tap in the bathroom, for sure it is." She decided not to turn on the lights and felt around for the tap. She turned the handle but noticed it was already tightly turned off. "That's odd," she whispered. Then she heard a noise coming from the corner of the bathroom and ran upstairs, back to her bed. Another half hour later, she woke up again. Drip, drip, drip. She was getting frustrated now, so she marched down to the bathroom, turned on the lights, and screamed. Her her parents were hanging dead from the ceiling with blood dripping on the floor. On the wall, on the wall was a message, written in blood, saying, "You should have turned the lights on." The writing on the wall. Sometimes you wish you never read that. A young boy lay sleeping in his bed when he heard footsteps outside his room. He peeked out of his eyes to see what was happening when his door swung open to reveal a murderer carrying the corpses of his parents. After silently propping them up on a chair, he wrote something on the wall in the blood of the dead bodies. He then hid under the child's bed. The child got scared beyond belief. He couldn't read the writing on the wall, and he knew the man was under his bed. Like any child, he pretended that he slept through the whole thing and hadn't woken up yet. He lay still as the bodies, quietly hearing the breaths from under his bed. An hour passed, and his eyes got adjusted to the darkness. He tried making out the words, but it was a struggle. He gasped when he finally read out the sentence. "I know you're awake," he read as he felt something shift under his bed. Blurry. Sometimes being oblivious is better. I got my first pair of glasses last week. My parents didn't think I needed them at first, but the doctor said that there was something wrong with more than just my eyes. That was apparently very common, and that I needed specially prescribed glasses for my own good. He said that many people were given the chance to see the way I would. What does he mean by that? So I was lucky to get them? I thought he meant cars and faraway words would become less blurry. But over the span of a couple of days, many more things have become more clear. I started seeing night creatures all around. I've never seen them before, like in the corners of my room and in the darkened parking lots. I took my glasses off for the first time today. And let me just say, it's amazing how quickly demons and creatures turn into trees and shadows. I know I'm not seeing the truth, but I'm a simple person. I'd rather have things remain blurry, just the way it is for everyone else. We didn't question why, we just knew. We didn't question why the small town we found after getting lost in the countryside wasn't on the map. We didn't question why the shopkeeper in town didn't have eyebrows or hair on his head. We didn't question why he looked so strangely, greedily at us. We didn't question why the gas at the gas station we stopped at was so alluring traveler cheap. We didn't question why the clerk at the station were her eyebrows and hair, insisted on making a phone call in the back before ringing us up. We didn't question why the funny man outside by our car let us know the sun was going down. We didn't question why so many bald people stood on the street watching us frantically leaving their town behind. We didn't question why we began pulling our hair out, why we decided to turn back and head back to town. We knew why. The devil. Some beings are just too powerful for anyone to help you. I always had a problem with sleeping growing up. Many times I'd get sleep paralysis, but after I blessed my room, it hasn't happened in months. This happened to me about a year ago. I woke up in the middle of the night, frozen. If I tried to move, I'll get a really loud ringing noise in both of my ears. It would get louder each time I moved. I was terrified. I was too scared to open my eyes, but I felt a presence of someone in the room with me. My room isn't completely dark because I have a small blue nightlight. I open my eyes and see a very tall and dark figure with two horns on each side of his head, just standing there in the corner of my room, facing me. I panic and try to move my body. The ringing gets louder and louder and louder, and I can feel myself crying. I close my eyes, in my head, start praying. I started saying, God will protect me. God will protect me. Then, I heard a low, evil voice say, God can't help you anymore. The old man in the well. How long will you let greed control you? How much are you willing to sacrifice? For power? For wealth? For the old man in the well. Keith was 12 the first time the old man in the well spoke to him. Keith was out playing after dark on the family's small farm near the well. The old well had beams supporting a rope and a pulley with a bucket attached to it. Even though Keith was told that the well ran dry before he was born, suddenly he heard someone say his name in a slow, raspy voice. Keith twirled around and saw no one. A look of confusion spread across his face as he heard it again. Keith. This time, it was said with more force and a bit lower, a bit louder. The voice sounded like one of those old farmers who like to smoke, thought Keith. Looking down the well, Keith heard the same voice asking, Have you had anything tasty on you? Keith couldn't see anything past the 12 or so feet down the well, even though it was a full moon. Who are you? How'd you get down there? Keith asked. If you give me something tasty, I will reward you, said the voice. All Keith had were some cookies he'd stuffed in his pocket as he left to play. He put those in the bucket and lowered it down. He had lowered it nearly 40 feet and was literally at the end of the rope when he no longer felt the weight of the bucket on the rope. 20 seconds passed and he felt a weight on the bucket again and began to pull the bucket up. As he finished pulling the bucket up to the top, he heard the voice said, No, nice. Keith saw a reflection in the bucket and saw a rectangular piece of silver metal, about the size of an army dog tag. It was completely flat and smooth. Want fresh, the voice said. Even though Keith tried to talk to the old man again, there was no response. Keith made up a story about where he found the metal and took it to his father, who took it to town and confirmed it was an ounce of pure silver. After that, Keith kept it a secret. It took a while to discover that the old man was there the night of full moons. Keith quickly learned that only live things he put in the well would be rewarded, but only once for each item and once every full moon. So, one of each kind of animal was lowered down the well and rewarded. Keith now had a cigar box filled but mostly full of silver pieces by the time he was 16, but had run out of different animals to get rewarded for. It was around this time that a local farmhand went missing. It was also the same time that Keith was rewarded with gold pieces for the first time. Once Keith took over the farm, temp workers seems to vanish every now and then, without explanation from his farm. The old man had finally found something tasty enough to always reward. I hope everybody enjoyed these wonderful, amazing, bone chilling stories as much as I did. If you like this kind of content, do not forget to like and subscribe and to follow for more. Click on that notification bell to get alerts and notifications whenever there's a new video. And also, don't forget to follow me on Twitch. I am live every night at GMT plus 9. I'll be doing this horror spooky story time for the whole month of October. I'm probably extending it on until November as well. Not really sure, but we'll see. And also follow my socials for more updates for upcoming videos and lives. Same with my Discord. Feel free to join my Discord and join these amazing communities where we talk about games and other stuff in the servers. Also, announcement will be hosted there a lot of times, so everybody will be up to date about things that we're gonna be doing together. And also, if you have any stories that you would like to share, please do not hesitate on joining one of the Google Forms where you can submit your stories or emailing to me directly. I would love to hear your stories and read it and share it to everybody. Alright, I hope everybody have a wonderful day and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!